on Google Meet.
Sure, sure.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, my dear friends. Thank you for waiting. It really feels great coming after such a long time and addressing students. It's really a great thing for us alumni, coming back, and you have such a wonderful principal and faculty over here who does such great work. And I'm really, Madam Nangia is, Madam Kiran is there. Really, this is a great inspiration for me because whatever I'm going to tell you was taught by her to us, and we did not give much value at the time. But of course, now we realize it is. See, when you grow up older, you start realizing the value of things that you have missed. Like these college days. Similarly, this old our history, the origin of our architectural history, modernism. Madam actually introduced this to us. The sense of that it is a modernism of a modern architecture actually began during the time of Renaissance. It's a wonderful period. Nothing has come like that in the coming times. Here in modern times, we try postmodernism, which is basically a rehash of the thing that they were doing earlier. They were getting influence from antiquity, and that is what postmodernism also say the same thing basically. So they are copying Renaissance that way. So let me start. You see, the poster was great. Somebody who has done the poster? Anybody from here? Who is responsible? Oh, acha. Very nice. Means
Samarth is from final year and he's part of our research team.
I see. So if I go there, it's okay. Let me try from here because I don't want to lose contact with the mic. See, this image I have added in my PPT. This is Santa Maria Novella. Our Alberti's first work in Renaissance style. Basically, this is a facade, and behind this there is a Gothic church. So this is the symbol of Renaissance for many people. Renaissance means many things to many people. For me, it is this. What is this called? Renaissance man, inspired by Vitruvius. This man, and this church, Brunelleschi's Duomo. You may have seen in Florence whenever you have been there. This is the biggest adventure construction at the time, and it has a history of maybe 100 years. So this is how Renaissance began. They protested this Renaissance. They become so inspired, and at the time that they challenged the clergies, the very powerful clergy and Pope and everybody. They challenged. They said, "We won't design by your method that you are telling us." Earlier, what happened? They used to say, "This is God's decree. Design the church like this. There is nothing better. God has told us church should be like this." So they followed. Gothic architecture was done like that, up to Gothic. Renaissance, they said, "Nothing doing. We'll do better than God. Give us a chance." And they convinced. So Brunelleschi was the first one who took it upon himself. See, this is not only in architecture, in arts, politics, literature, music, everything, there was a revolution. So that was a period called Renaissance. Of course, they did not call it Renaissance till then. It was called Renaissance up to maybe about 200 years later. The French people started calling this is a rebirth. So it's that way. Let me just check. So, and one more interesting thing is just next to that Santa Maria Novella, you have placed the modular man, and six of them are there, and then there is one. See, this is a legacy of Corbusier. Corbusier is our Chandigarh's Corbusier, basically. In Chandigarh, we study about Corbusier. We start with Corbusier and almost end with Corbusier. That is the thing. But so many things are there we have never questioned. See, I remember in Norma Evanson's book, there is one thing. See, if Corbusier designed a lay modular in human scale, as per our anthropology, this thing, anthropometry, then why there are such big structures in Secretariat and Assembly? Why they are so big, monumental scale? Why? Nobody could answer satisfactorily. But thing is, here there is a hint. See, he has learned from he was always very much inspired by Renaissance period, always, although he never mentioned it. There was no concept as postmodernism during his time, but he was in a way postmodern, and Chandigarh has that Renaissance link. I'll tell you after 2-3 slides. So he knew when to upscale. Basically, this is all about upscaling. So he knew how to upscale. Everything cannot be on human scale when you're designing something for 1,000 people, like Secretariat or Assembly. So many people will come. You can't do it on human scale. So he knew he had to upscale, and that's why this is a symbol of upscaling. The way you have shown over here, 6, this hints at basically upscaling. So this is my cover. The next one, let me just. So I'll take two slides more about Renaissance, because this is the background on which Palladio worked, and of course Corbusier also was very much influenced. Very generic, basic definitions. Duomo by Brunelleschi. It was in Florence. So in Florence at the time it was a different country altogether. Florence was a different country. Venice was a different country, and Rome was a different country. Unification of Italy didn't happen then. So they were having their own countries, they were having their own fights and collaborations, everything. It was, and the Renaissance period was inspired by humanism, they call. Otherwise, everything was inspired by God. Now, this is the first time humanism concept philosophy came in, that everything should be human-centric. It should be for us, by us. These thoughts started coming up, which gradually moved on to democracy in these modern times. So they are saying Renaissance humanists believe that the human body is a microcosm of the universe. That is what Vitruvius had, said basically, and Leonardo da Vinci had made that Vitruvius man, that circle and square. Square is earth and circle is divine. That means we are going to touch divinity by taking care of ourselves. Humanism first. That was the concept. So Renaissance, what happened then? So they started to do it themselves. But what happened? They took inspiration from 2,000 years older antiquity. This is very interesting. 2,000 year antiquity means all temples. There was no Christianity then. Romans were all pagans. They were believing like us. We believe in gods, various gods. Romans also believed in various gods. So these guys were, and those temples were given up after Christianity came in 0 BC, then 600 AD. By that time, gradually, the paganism was gone, totally gone. The temples were derelict and they were getting destroyed. If you see the Forum in Rome, madam, so they are all derelict. Of course, they are getting maintained nowadays, but they gave up. There was no use for the temples because nobody worships gods then. Christianity is the Abrahamic religion. So they thought, okay, we won't worship God anymore. The temples were lying there. But this Renaissance people, almost 2,000 years later, they decided, no, yeah, these Roman temples are actually great inspiration. We are missing out on a lot of things. We don't have any culture of our own, architectural culture, language. So they started picking up the language from the Roman temples. Everybody will go measure the Roman temples and come and design. And they will do the survey and come back and design. That is what Brunelleschi did. And the method, this 1400 to 1600, this is the period of Renaissance period basically. During this 200 years, so they fine-tuned the style. The style was basically of classical. Let me just read out these points. A period of transition between Middle Ages and modernity. Basically, Middle Ages converted into modernity. What then? Oh, my daughter. So it's a period of transition between Middle Ages and modernity. We call ourselves modern. They also called themselves modern at the time. Now, of course, we call them Renaissance and not modern. Anyway, they were really the first moderns, basically, because they had their own mind and they wanted to, create rules, architectural arts, and everything that is human being originated. Yeah? An effort to revive and surpass the ideas and achievements of classical antiquity. Means they were taking inspiration from those 2,000-year-old classical antiquity. Antiquity means old stuff which has been given up upon, that is the thing, those temples. Great social change in art, architecture, politics, literature, exploration, science. Nothing like that happened till then. We are only carrying on that legacy. You can still hear the reverberation of Renaissance now. Our architects are still deriving inspiration from the same antiquity, whatever you call it. We have given a different name. We call it postmodernism. Basically, we are also trying to do the same thing. Old sentiments, old temples. And you know what? When I was a student here, sitting here like you, we heard the word postmodernism for the first time, third year. Maybe I was. They said, what is postmodernism? We used to hear is something to do with old temples. Which temple? Nobody knew. Huh? Is it our Swaminarayan temple or something? There was a lot of confusion then. So what to do? There are so many temples. How to take inspiration? So anyway, that temple was actually the Roman temple. It was lost in translation by the time it came after 500 years to us. It was lost in translation. So we did not know which temple, but we knew some temple is there. So the Italian term rinascita, rebirth, first appeared in Lives of Artists, Giorgio Vasari. Vasari is an architect, author, painter, many things. These guys were all, all-rounders, multi-dimensional people. They used to write books, paint, do sculpting, like Corbusier also did. And then they were architects also. So this rinascita word came first time in his book called Lives of Artists. Here he has taken interview and done a brief report on each of these architects. Brunelleschi, Michelangelo. I'll come to that slowly. The French word of Renaissance was adopted into English. Okay. So here in the reference, see the small letter I have written Brunelleschi's dome. How a Renaissance genius reinvented architecture by Austin. If you want to learn about the interesting story of how this dome came about, it will tell you the story of Renaissance, basically the struggle, the politics, the history, and the adventure. You won't find anything like that nowadays. Basically, I can tell you this. So you can read that book. Very interesting reading. It will be very enlightening. I'm sure many of you must have already read it. These books are half read and half left. Anyway, but even half is good enough. That's the next. See, this is basically Pantheon is the main temple that they talked about. Renaissance means the temple that they were talking about was Pantheon. This Pantheon is a perfect, dome. You can see it's this 43 feet sphere, can easily fit into this Pantheon. Everybody used to derive, Pantheon and refer it into their design. Each one, starting from the Renaissance architect, even nowadays people are doing. Here is a long list, starting Vitruvius is of course from the antiquity himself, but he was like the godfather. He will write books and inspire, and people used to read about him. Filippo Brunelleschi, he was the first architect, like the opening batsman of our Indian team. He was the opener. So I have given the timeline of their lives and work. Basically, you can see most of them were colleagues. Their careers were almost overlapping. And by the time you come down to Vasari, it's almost 200 years done. So that is the period of the Renaissance. So each of them had written some book, not each, many of them had written books which I have put in very small letter. If you are interested, you can read it anytime. There are some English versions coming out. You can read them. So their language was, what was the language? First is this Roman temple facade was very convenient architectural feature which they used. And they really worked very hard on the capitals. Capitals means these columns. They're basically Doric, Ionic, and this Corinthian. There are 4 or 5 types. They use them, and they had a architectural rule-based use of this thing. It was the base diameter. The diameter determines the height, and all that r is the radius of the diameter. So everything, if you decide I'll use a Doric column in my house, then everything will be in accordance to the Doric column. Everything else behind. That is the design principle at that time. That is the design language. Palladio used to think, suppose a client comes to Palladio, he will think whether this guy is a Doric column man or an Ionic column man. Accordingly, his house will be designed. The volume will change. The whole section changes, basically. Just by using a Doric column, replacing an Ionic column with a Doric whatever, the whole section of the house and the volume of the house will change. So if he's a rich man, Palladio will select, okay, Ionic, this is Ionic order. If he's a poor man, Doric order. Still poor, Tuscan. Absolutely poor, then there is they'll go and draw the column on the wall only, that's it. So that also option was there in Palladio's villas. So these are the long list of names. These are also not exhaustive. There are many more, but these are very important people. And these two in the middle, which I have colored in blue, are actually buried in this pantheon. They are buried, like many kings are buried in pantheon. These two architects who are almost contemporaries, they are also buried here. So that's the next one. Now I come briefly to how Palladio and our Corbusier, they were, how their works are related. This relation was actually discovered by a great professor called Professor Colin Roux, who used to teach in, MIT for a long time. So they used to, when in the universities abroad in USA and Europe, they do a lot of research in these buildings. Anyway, first this slide, let me just check. I'm sorry, I think I missed it. So again, Pantheon, how it has gone on to, inspire the Pantheon is translated in different design in a different way. Pantheon was old, like 27 BC. It was a temple, Roman temple, 27 BC. And by the time it was converted into a church, it was 690 AD. It was converted into a church, Christian church. But it is the main inspiration behind the Renaissance. See, first thing, I'll show you one. The first picture there, here. This one is Villa Madama, designed by Raphael and inspired by Vitruvius. Ideal house. Vitruvius had written one great description, ideal villa, how it should be. Raphael was deeply inspired, and then of course he took he has made a circular court over here in front, which he says is the symbolic presence of the Pantheon. So that was way back in 1518 to 1530. It was started in 1518, and it was complete in 1530, and it is still not complete. If you go to Rome and try to visit this, you cannot enter because it's a government building now. Whatever, in half-complete manner. Next is our, Villa Rotonda, Palladio's famous building. He also, referred that Pantheon in his, otherwise he would have never done this. He is a square person. Basically he deals with squares. But this guy, he took inspiration from Pantheon ultimately. And this is because he he went to Rome and started measuring temples. I have referred to those books also. Here, Paper Palaces, the Rise of the Renaissance Architectural Treatise, von Hart, then Palladio's Rome, a translation of Andrei Palladio's 2 guidebooks to Rome. He actually wrote 2 guidebooks on his visit to Rome from Veneto. He is from Vicenza. So from there he came to Rome. It's a different country, and then he measured all these temples. He went back. It takes a long time. It took 1 year for him to come and draw and then go back. They used to go by horse cart or maybe bullock cart. At that time there was no bicycle or anything. It's a long distance. And then he started his design. Suddenly had the immediately it had the Roman temple influence. Immediately it was seen. So you can see early Palladio is different. Then after post Rome visit, his designs changed, and it was influenced by the Roman temples and this building, which was not completed also by him because it was under construction when he unfortunately died, 1580. It was completed in 1592 by his disciple Scamozzi, another very influential name. So he was also inspired by this Roman temple. Next, it's 1825 to 30. There was one more very first museum building. You can see it's the first dedicated museum building. It was built in Berlin, Germany, by Karl Friedrich Schinkel. That also had this Pantheon reference. This is all Pantheon reference. These guys, they wanted only Pantheon reference in their somehow to adjust somewhere. So they Schinkel, but he was not very fond of the dome. So what he did, he covered the dome with a rectangular box on top. So you can't make out there is a dome inside, underneath. After that comes our Corbusier and Chandigarh. So I said no. So there is some Renaissance reverberation here in Chandigarh, and that is the assembly. Here our Corbusier did the same thing, but he shifted the circular opening on the off center. And he was very fond of doing things in breaking the symmetry and pushing things off center. He was very fond of that, modernist ideology. So he shifted the circle altogether and made a sculptural hyperboloid over there, truncated hyperboloid. So this was his reference to Pantheon. But see, the thing is, Corbusier was not aware of the postmodern word at the time. He was doing it by his deep inspiration from Palladio, Pantheon. He was very fond of it because his association was basically with those people who were dealing with Italian architecture of Renaissance period during that time. So this was the influence. And we were wondering what is happening, how come this came up. Anyway, after that, James Starling, of course, when James Starling did this Neo-Starts gallery, he was well aware of the word, postmodernism, and he never liked it. But he was definitely inspired by it. You see the, cylindrical drum there in the middle. So the drum was the reference to the Pantheon. But anyway, he never liked when somebody called him postmodern. It sounded little. He was not. Nobody likes the post something when you're still modernism. Nobody likes. He also never liked it. So that was the basic general thing about Renaissance. This is a canvas. Now my thing is limited to Palladio and Corbusier. Comparison of two buildings, which was discovered by Professor Colin Rowe. He did it brilliantly in his book, which I have got PDF copy. It's not a book. It's basically a small article in a book, 29 pages, out of which 18 pages are on this very prosaic language, flowery language. I have filtered the whole thing after reading. It's very tricky language. And I have, squeezed it into 3-4 slides, basically 3-4 points. So the first point, First point was, of course, a Virgilian dream. Virgilian dream means I want to have a beautiful villa surrounded by greenery, beautiful secluded villa. And I will want a very good life, everything nice, quiet and serene. This is a Virgilian dream. Yeah, there's a long story. So when he's comparing these two villas, he's talking about the Virgilian dream, that they are both inspired by the Virgilian dream. Maybe. But that way, actually, everybody is inspired. Everyone wants a big ground, big garden, and a small, beautiful house in the middle. It's a Virgilian dream only. But anyway, this to have that come. Basic first point I would say is the grid layout. Just have a look. Both the houses have been next slide. I'm sorry. So this is the first slide where I'm comparing this Palladio and Corbusier. Of course, this is done by Professor Rowe originally, but this is just a gist of the thing. Both buildings happen to be of the same size out and out, about 75 feet by 55 feet. If you see the dimension on Palladio's book, it shows 64 feet. But when you measure in physical, when you go and measure it, as the way I did with a laser, device, it shows 75 feet. Then I say, what happened? What is wrong? Inside it is showing as 64, outside it is 75. Then I realized that they are talking about Byzantine feet. Means for us, 1 feet is say 300 millimeter. Byzantine feet is 348 millimeter. So everything is in Byzantine feet. So you have to multiply it with 1.16, then you will get the actual dimension. So both the buildings happen to be of the same size. Actually, the owners at the time, 1930, around 1930, the owners they had a lavish life. This building is called Malcontenta. Malcontenta means next to the river. I have been here, nice river. You can go in many ways. I went by a cycle because I cycled there. You can go by car, by boat, and nowadays they have got great arrangements, very expensive, but many arrangements are there. Corbusier was invited many times in this building by the owner for party and all, and he took advantage of that and he measured the whole building. And then he came back. See what he has done. Villa Stein at Garches. I have not seen this. I have not measured this also, but this, according to Professor Rowe, these buildings are of the same size. Width, length, and height. Height, I have superimposed them, and I'll show you how it is the same size. But as a grid is also the structural grid is also the same. Just see, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Same for Malcontenta and same for our Villa Garces. I hope you can see 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 8 by 5. Of course, in the other direction, the what is that y-axis? I think slight difference is there. Corbusier has taken some cantilever. He has taken cantilever. You know why? He wanted to have the facade in a golden section. He was a facade person. That screen wall, that facade wall is free. So he wanted that. So he has taken it out of the structural grid and made it free and made it into a golden section. So this was Corbusier's trick. He has done that. Anyway, he has adjusted within the same 5 by 8, 5.5 by 8 size that he has done. Even the, the loggia of Malcontenta and the terrace veranda of this Ghats is there also of 1.5 measurement, same, the outside the front portion. So this is alternate double single base comparable tripartite distribution in the vertical. When you see tripartite distribution of support grid, 1.5 grid for extruded terrace or portico. Area of interest is either concentrated or dispersed. See, in Palladio's design plan, Palladio is to design everything on the plan itself. Everything, measurement, section, it was done on the plan. But Corbusier design was done on the elevation. He will free up the elevation first, and then he will make it into. In the next slide, I'll show you how he would do that. Design program decides the structure for Palladio. Means Palladio believes in symmetry. Central axis will be there. There will be one central axis, and if there are both side room, there will be a hall in the middle, and then room on either side. They'll maintain the central axis. So that determined his structural system. That means that you need a lot of walls, and it requires all these load-bearing walls, thick walls. They were. So this is the design he came up with. Everything on the plan. Whereas our Corbusier had domino, structure. Domino is basically no beam walls, only the structural slab and thin columns. He wanted free space like this room, no column, nothing. I can have anything, a kitchen here, whatever small enclosure there. So his structural system helped him to make his layout and program in the way he desires. So there were two different things, opposite things basically. Requirements forced Palladio to go for this, load-bearing wall thing, whereas for Corbusier it was the other way around. Le Corbusier's concept of free-flowing. Now, next point is Le Corbusier's concept of free-flowing horizontal space comes to a sudden halt when juxtaposed against rigid outer walls. So, of course, it was a free space, but suddenly it is covered by these four rigid walls. What happens? There's an explosion. There's a sense of explosion because suddenly you are cutting off the whole free volume. So there's a sense of explosion. So what he does, he cuts all these terraces, open terrace or some kind of hole, something, some cutout he will do, ramp coming up, and he will create some implosion and balance the tension. So these are the two different styles of design for both architects. But you see the grid is the same in either case. Corbusier then creates roof gardens, cutouts, terrace, etc., and thus confronting an explosive situation with an implosive one. I have mentioned in the reference mathematics of the ideal villa because these are basically the language of Professor Colin Rowe only, not much interpretation. And this is called Quatre Libri. Quatre Libri is the 4 books of architecture, very popular for Palladio's books.
Slide share. Can I
Sure, please. Madam, I hope it's okay. It's not. I hope people are not getting bored. Thank you. See, I mentioned Quatre Libri also bottom. I think it's there in our library also. You can refer. Very clearly given the dimensions, details, everything is there, Palladio. Very nice books. And that's how he's so famous and so popular in the world. Without the books, you must have documentation of your, achievements. Otherwise, it's all very hollow, slogans. Next. So here you see, just see, these are comparable, same size, same scale facade of the two buildings. So different they are. One is having a classical Renaissance architectural language. The other one is having absolutely modern Bauhaus kind of modernism, but they have the same grid, same size, and they are determined by same golden rules, golden scale they are following. Both of them are following this golden scale, and both of them are actually tweaking them somewhere here and there just to make ends meet. Here you see in Palladio, in Palladio's case, he is writing the dimensions in the plan itself, whereas Palladio will write the dimensions on the elevations. See, A is to B equal to B is to A plus B. Basically, I have given this golden section diagram, which is very popular. You can find it in the internet. It's the same as this one, same. Here, A and B is different. In the golden section, A and B is just the opposite, not the right A and B as per, it's not as per Corbusier's A and B, but basically they are meaning the same thing. Le Corbusier's facades are the primary demonstration of the virtues of mathematics using golden ratios, as you can see. He calculated upon his perceptual facade, which is freed up thanks to the adopted structural system. So he has got a domino structural system behind the screen. It's a screen wall, and he has freed up the wall. Okay. He has freed up the wall and made it into a golden section. Now, this wall is, despite what is happening behind in the domino. So at least he has done that. That was his way of actually designing. Le Corbusier always carefully worked out the calculations by a system of regulating lines and figures that you can see here. This is one Palladio's this malcontented plan. Here you can see that things are clearly written in the plan, the dimensions. You see, problem, I'll tell you now what happens. In this design, he has used ionic columns. Now, ionic columns, he has taken 2 feet, 2 Byzantine feet diameter. That is more than 2 feet actually. It's almost 2.5 feet. So he has got 6 of them. This loggia or veranda is basically 32 feet wide. 32 to 35. Actually, my measurement showed 35, but here, if you anyway, it will be less than that. And the height is about 24 feet. These columns are 24 feet high. So as per rules, they have their own rules. The loggia, the veranda has to be half that height, 12 feet. That is, it is there, 12 feet width. So this is how Palladio's design takes place. First, he designs the loggia itself. He wants to, he first sees a client, what is it? Then he thinks, okay, for him, I'll have a Doric column loggia or Ionic column. So he starts 32 feet, 24. Looks like a palace. When you go and stand there, it's so massive that you feel as if you are a king or prince or something. Massive. So that is how he designs. And then what he'll do, he'll extend this width into the hall. This hall he would call sala, not our sala. This sala is called, it's a Latin version of saloon. So the main hall, dining hall or whatever, lounge hall. So the width of that hall will be determined by the width of the loggia. So basically what's happening, this column selection, the order is basically forcing the design. And then on top of that, Palladio has his own system of proportions. He will say, whatever is the width, the smaller width of the room, the height will be that much. So see, the hall is 32 feet here. 32 feet means that height will be 32 feet. Nothing doing. He will do it 32 feet. And the next room, which is 16 feet or 12 feet, the height will be 12 feet. So he will have to deal with this also. Besides the order, forced design, he has to design the heights also accordingly, and there will be different varying heights. Main hall is whole 32 feet high. The next side rooms are 12 feet or 16 feet high. He will have one more on top of that just to adjust, so that everything comes in line. And there will be atrium kind of a filling in the middle. That is one thing. He will play, and then he has a concept of squares that that he wants to play with squares, 9 squares within this. So that was his method of design. For Palladio, the ultimate proof of his theory lies in the plan. I have taken this plan because it shows the dimensions very clearly. His calculation of design is based on the plan. Palladio controlled his plan by a central axis and design program laid out symmetrically on either side. So that was his simple way of arranging the rooms. Here again, Colin Rowe and Castro Libri I have referred to. Here is a blow up, he's a friend of mine, Branko Metrovich. He's a professor doing all kinds of research in Corbusier's villa. He's trying to find out the exact proportioning system and he's failing basically. He has tried, he will claim, 60% of my measurements are correct. Next year he will say, 80% is correct. So 20% is still missing, because Corbusier has Palladio has tweaked so much, like Corbusier himself. Palladio will write something and do something in the actual site. In the drawing, he has got some measurements. He confounds our people who are doing research, like Mitrovich is a very serious senior professor with very good books. He initially was going by his, Castro Libri dimensions. There he sees there is something else over there. Why it is like that? He's wondering. Thankfully, he shares this blow up. He gets his students to do all this computer-generated section. This is Villa Coronaro, basically. This is not the malcontenta, but it shows the orders, similar orders, and the dimension of the veranda and all these things. You see, the inside central hall is the same width as the veranda, and then everything falls in line somehow, and then he manages the elevation from front. Palladio's system of proportioning was primarily based on the order he used, in this case the Ionic order. Ionic means tall, broad one, tall and slim, but the building will be bigger. And Doric means you can do with less height. Dorics are little stout columns, order, and you can do with less height. So for a poor person, he will suggest Dori. And for, as I told, for Tuscan, is still further poor. Too poor also people came, the only picture of the column will be there, no column otherwise. The conflict between the demands of the order and a series of natural relationships is how the facade of malcontenta is derived from. There are, as I said, the conflict is there. These orders are telling you to do something, and then you have your own proportion system, 6 feet, 12 feet, all these things, so you have to cover up all these things, manage all these things. So that conflict is always there. This sometimes led to Palladio willfully tweaking his dimensions to suit the program. Anyway, these are language from our Colin Rowe. Here, you know what, in this one I have superimposed the two buildings exactly as per the size. You see how they are superimposing exactly, almost. You would forget that that eave portion, the sloping roof portion on top. Otherwise, by and by, sideways and front face, they're exactly matching. And the elevations read through front to back and vice versa. Means the windows are also basically matching. Both this has a ribbon window all around, ribbon window, our villa arches. But the window location is matching with the window location of Palladio's content. And here on the bottom, I have taken the two plans and merged them together. You can see the contradiction here. One half is Palladio's plan, the other half is Corbusier's plan. Corbusier's plan is, of course, a free plan, totally free, because it's a flowing space. He has got very little inside, one ramp, all these curved walls, and here it is thick masonry walls, so they are load bearing, small rooms. So this is a comparative this thing. This is a very important point, very important observation that Colin Rowe made, that Palladio's plans are parallelized because it is bound by a symmetrical line, central symmetrical axis. It is parallelized plan, but section is free. One room can be 12 feet high, the other room can be 30 feet high, the other room can be 16 feet high. Free section. Whatever is your width, if the toilet is 6 feet width, the height will be 6 feet. If the hall is 18 feet, height will be. So he has no qualms about that. Corbusier could not attend. His 6 feet toilet will also have a 3 meter high ceiling, and his 18 feet wide hall will also have a 3 meter ceiling. That's the thing is, his plan is free. Corbusier's plan is free, but the section is parallelized. Whereas Palladio's plan is parallelized, the section is free. This is a very important observation by Colin Rowe. See, in this section, you can see how high this, for the same building, the medium living area is so high, 32 feet high. Whereas the attic and the basement, the lower ground area are only 8 feet. They are only 8 feet, basically. The bottom one is 8 feet, the top one is 8 feet, plus that extra height from the sloping roof. So he was, in his design, this was possible. Whereas in Corbusier's sections, it is domino architecture, the domino structure. You can't have anything beyond certain height. 3 meter means 3 meter. And that means there is a limitation. If you have a big hall which is 3 meter height all the way, you can't see. That's why they're saying, despite the free plan, it was never easy to visualize the interior spatial organization of Villa's time. So many walls, you can't see everything, where the building is, where the full, floor, full design, you cannot, visualize, because the height is limited all the way in 3 meter. Unlike in Malcontenta, means the Palladio's house, if you stand in the middle of the hall, the big hall, you can see the whole house. It's like an atrium. You can see the smaller rooms also on either side, and the hall, of course, and the veranda behind you, where one could consider the entire building while standing at the corner. So this was an important thing. Only one more thing I want to add here, which he did not highlight much. Corbusier, although free plan and parallelized section, but the elevation was free. He said it somewhere, but the elevation, because he is taking the elevation, that front wall, the front facade, he is taking it out of the structural system, and then he is making it as per golden section. So elevation was somewhat free. That was him, I think, missed. So anyway, that was more or less comparison between Corbusier and Palladio. I have got the PDF book. You can read it. Lots of things he has written, but basically these are the points. Here I'm just showing the CAD models of various Palladio villas. You see how for the same scale, how the volume is changing. Somewhere the volume is almost touching the ground, somewhere it is way up, although it's the same size of the house. But if the rooms are small, then the height will also be small. And if the rooms are big, in some big villas, then the height will be massive. So you can see, these black ones are the ones which are built, means the gray background ones are built, and the white background ones are not built. There are so many Palladio villas which are not built. I met one professor called Mr. Lionel Pupi in Venice one university. He gave me a book. He has done a thorough research in all the works Palladio may have done or has done, whatever. So that is a compendium of 350 projects. Sometimes one column, one gate, everything is included there. Means he has done a study. This kind of thesis they are doing, the students. I would like our students also to do some similar thesis and ask similar questions. So we have got so many buildings over here, important buildings. You can actually follow that kind of style like they are doing. So this is one example. See here, the one more point is the 9 square grid. He pointed out, even Rudolf Whitwer pointed out, the Andrea Palladio, he would design by 9 squares. He will do the loggia first, then he will put the 9 squares and adjust his plans on either side around a central axis. He would do. These are the various plans of, where some of the villas that he had designed. They're all based on 9 squares. Okay, 9, sometimes they are more or less also, but 9 squares. And Colin Rowe has made a comparison of 9 square grid by placing the Villa Stein and Corbusier's Malcontent side by side. And he has shown that both are playing with 9 squares. Corbusier also and Palladio also. Palladio's 9 squares are very tightly, very tightly integrated around central axis, but his 9 squares are floating around freely. That is the thing. He has a 9 squares grid homogeneous space, rigid mathematic composition. Here, 9 square grid homogeneous space, all right, but fluid mathematic composition is Colin Rowe. So you can read the books, you can read it in Architectural Principles in the Age of Humanism. Rudolf Whitwer's brilliant book. You will get in the library, and of course, Palladio by James Ackerman. Our Rupinder, my friend Rupinder was a student of James Ackerman when he studied in MIT. I hope he is listening. These are the CAD plans. Nowadays, these are available. You can use them. People are doing. Here's a deconstruction of a Palladio villa. Basically, this is a Villa Zemo. See, Palladio, if you see the this book for four books of architecture, Quattro Libri of Palladio, they're nicely designed, nicely documented plans and elevations. This is how he used to do. He will do the elevation and the plan will come on top of the elevation, combined. And this is how the thing flows. The way they are, building up A, B, C, D. These are the different stages. Then again E, F, G, H. And then the middle portion is the cap, roofs, and the columns. Columns will be any of these balustrades or any of these orders. This is how the final, in the corner, the bottom corner, you will see the Villa Zeno. This is a 3D model. This is how people are working, and you can actually do. Easy to understand, how to, simple, yet it is very proportionate, beautiful to look at, and it's a timeless design inspired by the architectural language of Renaissance. Various, see, within Palladio's house, there are so variety of heights. One hall is 32 feet height, one hall is 12 feet height, one is 16 feet. How to manage these heights? So see, he has six kinds of vaults. You see that corner, six kinds of vaults are there. First, he would vault up the space like this. Central hall will have a cross vault major. Then different kinds of small rooms will have smaller vaults. And then on top of that, wherever he has to build another floor, he will do a brickwork. Brickwork will come on top of that, and he will make it flat. Below there will be a vault. You can't see that. On top there will be a flat masonry. There are lots of photos on that. We have done a lot of study and sections are there. I didn't want to cramp up all these things. There are many drawings and design, but this is how he managed. So many kinds of walls are there to just compare this with our Corbusier's ceiling. Thin structural slab, nothing is there, and just see how much hard work what Palladio has been doing. And to begin with, specializations came. So civil engineers separated 1700 or 1800 time. They become a separate discipline. Architects, they used to do paper drawing. They'll just submit the drawing and okay, fine, that's our job. But at that time, they used to do all these things in their own hand. Of course, Palladio, later on, he had his own big team and they were doing it. He was just saying like this, that was there. The time came, but he was, mastering all this, managing all these things. I think these are some of the photographs I have taken. This interior work full of frescoes. The artists will take over and finish. They want to paint everything, door, window, and they'll create every kind of imagery over there. And Palladio never liked it, basically, although they are brilliant interior work, fresco paintings of very famous fresco painters. For this top one is Foscari, and this left-hand side one also Foscari. And this middle and the right one is our Rotonda. Villa Rotonda. At that time, when I went into photograph, they used to allow going below the dome and take photograph. Nowadays, they are not allowing. They have made a circle, a railing kind of a thing, and they don't allow people inside. Anyway, so see the amount of fresco. This is the interior design of that time, fresco work. Palladio didn't like it, but he had to somehow accept. So this is my 16th slide. I think that is all. I hope I just wanted to inspire you to study a little bit more about the birth of modernism, modern architecture, and where from our Corbusier took inspiration. So I hope I have been able to do a little bit. So you can ask me any question. I will try to answer. Thank you. Anything from anyone?
A comment or a question?
In this one slide, you have mentioned the book Pari Libri.
Quattro Libri.
What's the name?
It's there in Quattro Libri is the 4 books of architecture. You get the English translated one. Only thing is that English is medieval English. It is there in the library, madam. It's there. You'll find in the library also. All very neatly done. The diagrams, dimensions, everything is there. So you can have a look. Very nice. And it's a 4 books means first book is about materials, building materials. Second book is about his villas. Like that, there are 4 books he has made for. Those time architects used to write books and cement their place in the society. Everybody wrote something or the other, most of them. And they are very great books. And nowadays in European universities, that referring to those books, and students are doing thesis like this. Yeah, last time I was the external. Madam had given me the opportunity during this COVID time. I found this. You guys are doing the same designs: old age home, hospital, hotel, same things going on. Try to do something different. That is what I am suggesting. Try to do something do-it-yourself type. Like, you know what, our class, we did the geodesic dome, do-it-yourself style. Then I made a thesis in Hindi, which was do-it-yourself style. That the community build, how the community will build their own houses without the help of architect or builders. They can do it themselves. Of course, it was not a very complete work, but it was a start. It was in Hindi. It was appreciated outside. And now I'm thinking I'll build one house all by myself. Like that is what I'm thinking. After retirement, I'll do that. Means as much as possible. Yeah, I'll try. So then you will start appreciating architecture more. What in the true form of the profession. Now, otherwise, what is happening now? At least we used to work hard on the paper during our times, hatching, stubbing. But nowadays, that is also taken away. All computer generated millions of 3D IT guys can take over our job also. Like the IT guys will take over the jobs of the medical practitioners, the normal doctors. How they'll do genetic engineering, they'll do manipulating in the IT servers, and they'll treat the disease and everything. How what will our doctors do then? They are used to cutting, surgery, and medicine. What how they'll survive? Same thing may happen with our architects also in the coming maybe 50, 100 years. Thank you. Any question, I'm always open. Huh? Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone who is listening to me on the net. Madam, anything? Please come. Please. I want to hear from you.